The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hi everyone and welcome to today's webinar. Today's topic is remoting and companion. I'm Mike and my colleague Werner will do the moderator today.
Good morning everybody, enjoy today's webinar.
Thank you, Werner. Alright, so today we will have a look at the Widget Designer's remoting. After that I will give you an overview about the companion, and then we will also create some controls for the Widget Designer, Pandoras Box, and I show you some other useful features with that. Okay, so the Widget Designer Remoting works with TCP, UDP, or HTTP, and all of the incoming messages will be processed as a command directly. So the syntax of that, so the commands need to be in the curly brackets here, and if the syntax is correct, the incoming messages will be directly processed as commands. Due to the syntax here with the curly brackets, they cannot be used within the literal. And the remoting can be used for controlling the Widget Designer via third-party products like Companion or QuestRun. Okay, so let's switch to the Widget Designer. So I already opened two Widget Designer instances, so you can see an instance on the left side and one on the right side. So to set up the remoting, we go to the connections, then we open remoting, and here we can choose if we want to use TCP, UDP, or HTTP. So for now we use a TCP server here, so we enter a port. You need to make sure to use a port which is not already in use. Then you select the network adapter, and then you can enable the connection. So as you can see here, the TCP server has been started. Okay, so let's go to the second Widget Designer instance. Here we need to go to the connections, TCP UDP connections. And there we need to create a TCP connection as a client only. So I name that remoting. Then we need to enter the IP address of our Widget Designer here. Okay, the port 10,008, and then select the adapter again. Okay, you can already see this connection is established, so the status is connected. So let's create a custom script button. And in here we can add a TCP send command. We want to send to IDU number 1, and then we need our message. So we add the quotation marks here, and then we open the curly brackets, and then we can put in our command in here. So let's put here fader up, fader 1 in 2 seconds. Now we need to close the curly brackets again, then the quotation mark. So this is our message here. And then we need to close the bracket for our TCP send command again. Okay. So when I press this button now, you can see the package has been received by the other Widget Designer instance. So if I create a fader now, okay, and I press the button again, you can see I'm controlling the other instance here. So this command is directly executed. So let me show you another example with a label. So for the label, we have to do it a bit different. So I want label 1, text, equals hello. So now we are using the quotation marks inside of our message. So we cannot use quotation marks here to start and end the message. So for that, we have to use the single quotation marks. Of course, we can always use the single quotation marks to not worry about what's inside here. Okay. So when I execute that, you can see the label text has been changed. All right. So that's so far for the TCP remoting. Of course, you can use any command that the Widget Designer offers for the remoting. Let me show you the HTTP listener. So I show you an example with my browser. Okay. So HTTP. So I put in the IP address of my Widget Designer. Okay, then I do a slash, question mark, and then I can open the curly bracket again and type in my command I want to send. So let's say I want the fader down, fader 1 in 2 seconds. Make sure to close the curly bracket here, and when I press enter here, you can see the command has been executed by the Widget Designer here. Yeah, so there are multiple ways available how to control the Widget Designer. Are there any questions for that, Werner?
Yes, in your remote input control tab, there is a little checkbox, single client and multi-client. Can you explain the difference between them, or what's the difference between them?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, good question. So if a single client here is checked, only one other application can be connected to that TCP server. So multiple connections are not possible to that TCP server. If you check multi-client, you can have multiple connections to that. Another point is if you go for UDP, so it works the same way. So the syntax is the same, just with UDP send if you're using the remoting. But the UDP doesn't care about the IP address, or it doesn't need to. So you can also do a broadcast with the UDP. You can of course have as many connections to as you want. So there's no multi-client for that.
Cool. Thank you.
Okay. So let's continue with companion. So let me close this Widget Designer here. Check that again. Okay, so if we start companion, first we need to select our network adapter. So I choose my Wi-Fi adapter here, and then I launch the GUI. Okay, so when I've started it, let me bring that full screen. I need to add an instance first. So I can go here to add by manufacturer, and then you can find Christie Digital Systems here. And there you find the Pandoras Box and the Widget Designer. So we're going to add the Widget Designer here. Here at the top, you can give it a label. Okay, and there you need to enter the IP address of the Widget Designer. So here again, I'm using the TCP now, so I need to add my IP address here, but I can also switch between or choose the UDP here, and there I can also do a broadcast. So with the broadcast, I can send with one instance here, with one companion instance, I can send to multiple widget designers in the network. With TCP, it's only one widget designer then at the end. Okay, so yeah, so we can see the status now is okay. So we are connected. So I can go to the next step here, which are the buttons. Yeah, so I don't have the Stream Deck device here as I'm working in the home office. So I'm going to use the emulator today. So we have the emulator here left. So here, this is our Stream Deck device. Okay, so if we select a button of our Stream Deck here, you can see here on the right, we can edit the button. And I'm set the button type to a regular button. So I can give it a label here. So this should be fader down. Let's call it fade down. So I can also assign an image to that. I can do text alignment, can change the color here of my text or of my background. And the most important stuff is down here. So here I can add the actions. This is pretty similar to the Widget Designer buttons. So we have the key down actions and the key up actions. So it's the click and release script like in the Widget Designer. So if I add here the key down action, you can see here a bunch of internal commands. So with that command, I can, for example, switch the page of my Stream Deck. I can change the colors here of the buttons. So there are multiple things I can do with the internal commands. Here at the bottom, I can find the WD commands of my Widget Designer instance. So that's the label of my instance. I called it WD Companion. And here I got 3 commands. Yeah, so let's have a look here at the fade to value in seconds. I select that. I have here some parameters I can enter. So the fader ID, number 1, in 2 seconds should go to value, say 128. And if I press test actions and I have a look here in the Widget Designer, you can see the button fades up to 128. Okay. So let me select the next button here. Again, a regular button. And I want to add another command here. And now I use the WD command. So with this command, you can do basically every Widget Designer command which is available. So you can also do the custom script click, of course, and also the fade to value. So those are just some presets which makes the entering values faster. But you can enter here any command you want. So let's change our label again. And let's say we want to replace it with companion. We take a look, it's still on hello. But as soon as I press here the test button, you can see the label changed here. Okay. Yeah, so that's controlling the widget designer so far. As I said, you can enter here any command you want. So let's have a look at some of the Pandoras Box commands. So for Pandoras Box, we enable that. I already set up the connection here. If I go on Edit, so you need to enter the IP address of Pandoras Box Manager here and the domain, of course. And a special thing about the Pandoras Box here, we have here dynamic variables. So I show you the dynamic variables later, but you have the possibility to get values from Pandoras Box, like timecode of a sequence, and use it in your buttons of your Stream Deck, for example. I explain you that in a few minutes. Okay, so when we have set up the connection here for Pandoras Box, we can check the status, and then we can switch to the buttons. So I select another button here. Then I create a regular button. And let's say this one should be used for previous queue. So I add an action here and I look for the PV. And there's command go to next or last queue. So I want the next queue for my sequence ID 1. Okay. And here I want to create another button, next queue. And where is it? There it is. Here I want the last queue. Okay, so let me break out the emulator here. Okay, so now you can see I can switch between my queues here. With my Stream Deck. Oops, I probably did it the wrong way. Yes. Okay, now. So when I press next queue, jumps to the next queue. With the previous, it goes back. All right. So let's add another button here for controlling the timeline state. So for play and pause. Leave that empty. So I add here the command, where is it? There, sequence transport. Set it to play. Then I can also press here the checkbox. This turns it to a toggle button, so it keeps the press state or the release state. And then I add another action, sequence transport again, for pause. Okay. So when I emulator, when I press this button here, you can see I can switch between play and pause. So now the dynamic variables come in place. So as you can see here, we have a list of variables which we have available. And there's also an instance feedback we can use. So for the instance feedback, we have two options we can choose. One option is to change the color of a button depending of the sequence state. So there are already some predefined colors here, but you can also change them depending of the colors you want. Yeah, so you can see this turned orange now. So let me open the emulator. When I press this button, the sequence is on play. When I press it again, it's on paused, and the button also turns orange. Yeah, so when I press play in Pandora's Box here, you can see also then the color switches here. Okay. So another thing you can do, you can add another button here. And if we go to the config, we can see here all of our variables. So this is basically the variable name. So let me use the current time of sequence variable. So copy the name here. And then I can paste it inside of my text line, like that. And if I go to my emulator, you can see here the time code of my sequence. Yeah. So another useful command is, or all those variables, they're all referring to the sequence ID 1 right now. So selected sequence is 1. So all of the variables, are referring to sequence ID 1. If I want to change that, I can create another button here. I can call it switch sequence. And then there's a command on it, which is called change timer sequence ID. Okay, so now this changes it to sequence ID 1. Let me create a toggle button out of it. Add this command again. There it is, sequence ID 2. Okay, and now when I switch it, you can see it's showing me the time code of my second sequence here, and also the state of my sequence down here. I can go here, so I can easily switch between the sequences which I want to control. With this button here. Okay. Got anything? Are there any questions so far?
Yes, there is the question for the sequence state. Is it possible to show it in the buttons of the Stream Desk?
Yeah, of course. So you can use one of the variables here. So there's one variable which is showing the running, stopped, or paused value. So you can copy that variable here. Okay. And then you can put that here in the button text. And depending of the state of the timeline, you can see the text in here changes.
Perfect, thank you.
Welcome. Okay. Yeah, so that's a basic overview about the companion. And there's another really powerful feature. So if you go to settings, you can also send ArtNet values, or you can use the TCP UDP remote control. So the remote control here allows you to change pages of your Stream Deck via other applications like the Widget Designer. So in the Widget Designer, we can set up a TCP connection to change the pages of our Stream Deck. So depending on what you're on which page you're in the Widget Designer, you can change the pages of your Stream Deck. So let me show you that real quick, how to set up this. So you go to the Widget Designer, then we need another TCP connection. So we add a client here, call it companion, then enter the IP address. Okay, and then the port. Check that. Okay, so the port is 51234. Select the adapter, and we can see connection has been established. It's connected. So we can send our commands to that. Right, so let's have a look how the command needs to look like. Yeah, go over. Oops. Okay, so I will add a button here. So again, TCP send. This is ID 1, and then our message. So the quotation marks, and then you can check here the command page set. You can see an example also down here. So page minus set space. I want to switch to page number 2, and here I need the surface ID. I can find the surface ID here at surfaces. So as I'm using the emulator, my ID will be emulator, depending on the Stream Deck device here. Yeah, this changes then. Okay, so emulator. So now important is to add a line feed here at the end of the message. You can do that with the square brackets. So opening square bracket, add here a line feed, close the square bracket, and then the quotation mark here, and then close the bracket of the TCP message. All right, so let's see if that works. So let me open the emulator. We can see I can switch to the pages with my custom script button and the Widget Designer here. So let me change that to page 1 again. Execute that. and you can see it switched back to page 1. So I can control Widget Designer or Companion in both ways. So this makes it really powerful. So one thing I didn't mention is when using the Widget Designer in here, it sends the TCP or UDP commands with the Widget Designer commands inside of the message. Then the Widget Designer receives that as a TCP or UDP message, and then it executes it as a command. The Pandoras Box is using the Pandoras Box SDK. So Pandoras Box will directly execute the commands which come in as it's using the SDK here. So that's basically it. Benna, are there any questions?
Yes, there's another question. Is it possible to display the time code over more than one button?
Yeah, I think you can split between minutes, seconds, and so on. So let me bring that up here. Whoops. So let me do that. How does that work? I think there was an option. Yeah, there it is. You can see here, this is the sequence time. But I can also use underline H for hours. And then you can see only hours in that button. So you can split that up within multiple buttons here. So hours, minutes, seconds, and frames.
Cool, thank you.
All right, so so we're at the end of our today's webinar already. So we will stay a couple more minutes if there are any upcoming questions, so we can answer them. Feel free to add your ideas to our forum for next webinars. Any topics you can add here in our forum. And if you missed one of our webinars, you will find them on our YouTube channel. Make sure to check out and see the webinars on there. So thank you for joining, stay safe, and see you next time.
Thank you too, goodbye.